We are now in the month of September, and you know what that means. It is now time for the NASCAR playoffs, a postseason-like structure where in the final 10 races of the season, the top drivers in the regular season duke it out in 4 separate rounds to determine who the champion is for that said season. It has had a very mixed review from fans, as many say this format is only for entertainment purposes and that we no longer crown a true champion. But hey, at least the best drivers compete. Wait, no, that's not quite true. Wait, at least the drivers who are victorious that season can run for the championship. Wait, that doesn't work either. At least it's entertaining. After the first 3 rounds eliminate a majority of the drivers out of the playoffs, the final race is set up with the final 4 who advance from all the previous rounds to duke it out for the championship. And to determine that said champion is that whoever finishes in front of the other 3 championship contenders is crowned that year's champion. Now, because of the many positions that need to be filled in order to complete the 16-team grid, there are bound to be teams that are going to fall short of the rest of the competition. And since the beginning of the NASCAR playoffs all the way back in 2004, we have seen some of the most impressive runs in the playoffs and some of the worst. And since we know who already did the best in each and every single year because they won the championship, like no duh, I figured in today's episode, why don't we talk about the drivers who had the absolute worst performance? What's up everybody, it is Vanilla Wafers with a big hat once again. Now the way we're going to pick the 10 worst playoff drivers is by looking at their averages in those last 10 races, or 3 if they were eliminated in the first round, and that will determine who actually did their worst. And let me tell you something, there was a lot of contenders here for the worst playoff performances, but I think we've narrowed it down to the worst 10, and also we included a dishonorable mention just for everybody who thought 10 wasn't enough. So strap yourself in to this wreckfest because we are going to look at some of the worst playoff performances in NASCAR history. A quick honorable mention to the Busch brothers in 2011. If you are a Busch hater, then 2011 was a fantastic playoff season for you guys. It also helps that Stewart and Edwards had one of the best playoff battles in Cup Series history, but hey, that's besides the point. In 2011, most fans could say that Kyle and Kurt Busch were at their worst when it came to their anger. I mean, it was getting so bad that Jimmy Spencer had his own segment for Kurt Busch's freakouts on the radio. During the 2011 playoffs, both drivers did decently in the first half, but completely fell apart in the final 5 races of the season. Neither driver was able to finish inside the top 10. Kurt's average finish was 27.2, while Kyle's was 29.5. Worse, Kyle Busch got suspended for 1 race from intentionally wrecking Ron Hornaday in a truck race, and Kurt Busch would have a complete meltdown at Homestead Miami Speedway by cursing at Dr. Terry Punch and flipping off a vehicle that had both Michelle Obama and Jill Biden. Definitely a bad look for both drivers and one playoff season that neither of them want to remember. Number 10, Jeff Burton in the 2010 season. Jeff Burton was a fairly competitive driver during the 90s and 2000s. However, when the 2010s rolled around, the Virginia native started to struggle. It seemed like he was going to have a decent showing in the 2010 season playoffs thanks to his consistency throughout the summer stretch, but that quickly faded away once the postseason began. In New Hampshire, Burton unfortunately ran out of fuel with just 2 laps to go, leading to a 15th place finish. After a 2nd place finish in Dover, Burton had his 2nd worst performance out of the chase drivers, only edging out Kyle Busch for an 18th place finish. At this point, Jeff Burton needed to have a perfect 7-race stretch if he still wanted to compete for the championship. Sadly, the opposite happened for the number 31 team as they racked up 6 finishes of 19th or worse, along with 2 DNFs at both Talladega and Texas. If that wasn't enough, Burton would run into the number 24 car of Jeff Gordon during a caution lap around Texas Motor Speedway, leading to this memorable moment.
We got a fight breaking out.
Yeah, Jeff's not happy. Jeff Gordon not happy with what happened there.
Now for me, obviously being a number 24 fan, this moment right here was absolutely perfect for me because I was so pissed off at Jeff Burton taking out my boy Jeff Gordon. I mean, I was just hoping Jeff Gordon would rip his head off, but I guess a little bit of a tussle, that's a good 2nd place, I guess. After that, it was clear that Jeff Burton was not going to even finish in the top 10 in the championship battle. Burton would wind up in the last position of the playoffs with an average finish of 21.4. with 2 top 10s and a minor ass kicking from a 4-time champ. Number 9, Jeremy Mayfield in 2004. In 2004, the inaugural chase for the Cup was introduced to the NASCAR Cup Series. Only 10 spots were available to make it into the postseason playoffs, and wins did not guarantee that a driver would make their way in. So to say that you were in the chase in the 2000s, now that was saying something. and no one was turning more heads than Jeremy Mayfield when he raced his way in with a victory while leading the most laps in a race at Richmond, the final race of the regular season. Seriously, he went from being 55 points behind the cut line to 9th in the points, beating the likes of Casey Kane, Dale Jarrett, Bobby Labonte, Kevin Harvick, just to name a few. So what was he able to do in this big opportunity for both him and Emporium Motorsports? Well, hardly nothing. In the first race of the chase at New Hampshire Motor Speedway, Jeremy Mayfield was caught up in a multi-car accident that caused the 19 team to go behind the wall for a multitude of laps. It wasn't even Mayfield's fault, as our boy Robbie Gordon and Greg Biffle were having their own skirmish on the track that wound up collecting 2 chase drivers in the field. Mayfield wound up finishing in the 35th position, 51 laps down, and nearly a full race behind in points after just one race. The team tried to bounce back into championship contention with top 10s in Dover, Kansas, and Martinsville, but unfortunately, in between those runs were DNFs at both Talladega and Charlotte Motor Speedway, taking Mayfield out of contention to run for the 2004 championship. The final 4 races were subpar at best, with all of Jeremy Mayfield's finishes outside the top 15, leading to the team finishing last in the inaugural playoffs with an average finish of 22.2. The following season, the number 19 team and Jeremy Mayfield himself were able to qualify their way back into the chase for the Cup, but fell a little bit behind the ball once again, this time finishing 9th in the standings. Then absolutely nothing else eventful happened for Jeremy Mayfield during his time in the Cup Series. He just left the Cup Series for some random reason in the middle of the 2009 season, and we never heard from him again. Number 8, Jeremy Clements in 2022. Oh, you thought we were just going to focus on the Cup Series? Oh, no, sir. Because you see, the playoffs was instituted into the Xfinity Series and Truck Series all the way back in 2016. And although there are some pretty good candidates that can take this spot in this video, I think the best candidate is Jeremy Clements, as he has made it into the playoffs 3 different times, and he has finished dead last in the playoffs all 3 times. What's worse is his most recent appearance inside the playoffs was actually his worst performance by far for the number 51 machine. Now, to be fair, Clements was able to win his way into the playoffs by pulling an upset at none other than the Daytona Summer Race, but he was then penalized for illegally modified intake manifolds on his winning car found in post-race inspection. But it was okay because they won the appeal and they were able to keep their spot in the playoffs. Let's just hope they did not screw it up. In the first race of the Xfinity playoffs, the team screwed it up with ignition issues on lap 79, resulting in a 36th place finish and a whopping 1 point towards the playoffs. This basically took away any hope of advancing to the next round, as the number 51 car already sat 31 points behind the cut line and over 100 points behind the points leader. The following race was no better for the 51 team, as they were the worst finishing team at Talladega, finishing 20th. Which is crazy because this race is usually considered a wreckfest. I mean, when you think of Talladega in fall, you are thinking a demolition derby, and not one car got significant damage. In fact, every single car was able to finish that race. If I was in those stands, I would want my money back because I came for blood. After the race at the Roval, Clements would finish 14th, eliminating Clements from the playoffs after being more than 50 points below the cut line. He went on to have some similar finishes in the remaining 4 races, got busted for cheating again at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Holy hell, man, did you learn from your first time? And finished last in the playoff standings with an average finish of 21.14. Number 7, Michael McDowell in 2021. Now we're starting to see the drivers who won their way into the playoffs only to immediately piss away the opportunity in the first round. McDowell was able to score his first victory at the grandest stage of them all, the Daytona 500. The win was the biggest upset in the Great American Race since Trevor Bayne in 2011, and a lot of people were super excited for McDowell on the win, only to then realize, oh wait, I forgot, the man qualified for the playoffs now. And besides the restrictor plate tracks and the road courses, the number 34 team was absolutely struggling. In the last 7 races of the regular season, the team finished 20th or worse. Well, let's hope that when the playoffs start, the Phoenix native can do better, right?
Right, you wouldn't say, what is 12 laps? That's not,
wow, the 34! McDowell got into the wall. He was sideways.
Down the back straightaway.
Got into the wall, and now he's around.
And then the day that Michael McDowell has won it either in the 34 car there that you see on your screen, hoping that it doesn't come to an end next weekend in Bristol.
Yeah, wow. What a joke he is.
Oh man, it did not get better. Not only did McDowell have the worst performance out of all the drivers in the round of 16, but he was the only driver who did not finish on the lead lap in those 3 races, eliminating him quickly from the 2021 playoffs. Although his finishes did improve in the second half of the playoffs, it still didn't help him advance his position in the points, as when it was all said and done, McDowell finished 16th in the point standings with an average playoff finish of 22.6. Number 6, Kyle Busch, 2006. Believe it or not, the worst performance that Kyle Busch had in the playoff format system was not with Joe Gibbs Racing or RCR, but rather Hendrick Motorsports. By 2006, Kyle Busch was proving to many that he would soon be a championship contender. The question was whether or not he would be with Mr. Rick Hendrick as his owner. The regular season looked promising for the number 5 Kellogg team as they were able to snag a victory at New Hampshire along with 9 top 5 finishes throughout the regular season. It seemed like he had a good shot to compete for the championship this season as he would be starting 4th in the chase for the Cup heading into New Hampshire, a racetrack he won prior in the season. But just like everyone else in this list so far, it immediately fell apart when the green flag waved for the start of the playoffs.
Very
we got trouble straightaway. 66.
Jeff Green hard into the wall.
Real hard. Oh, a spring is flying across the racetrack. Somebody ran it over, too.
They have concerns that they have knocked the front end out of line, and this is a really tough way to start the chase.
3 laps, ladies and gentlemen. 3. That's all it took for Kyle Busch's hopes to immediately deteriorate to be a championship contender in 2006. It's hard to tell whose fault it was, but Kyle Busch would make contact with the number 66 machine of Jeff Green, causing moderate damage to the number 5 car, which damaged the car's front end alignment. Busch would go a lap down by lap number 15 and got wrecked again on lap 199, inevitably ending his day early. In the second race, it only got worse for the 5 car as the engine expired on the 5 team at just the 100-mile mark of the 400-mile Dover race, taking his 15-point deficit at the beginning of the playoffs to 224 points, more than a full race behind the championship leader. At this point, it was clear that Kyle Busch was not going to be able to run for the championship by just race number 2 of the chase for the Cup. Although the team did pick things up from the 3rd to 6th race of the chase, Kyle Busch had a meltdown at Atlanta, Phoenix, and Homestead with an average finish of 34.3, which was worse than his summer stint in the number 8 car this summer. I mean, thank God he was able to improve it in the last 3 races of the regular season, but oh my God, that summer was, it was a stinker. I'm telling you, this year had to be absolutely hell for all the Kyle Busch fans. All 12 of them, in fact. In the end, the number 5 team had 5 finishes that were worse than 25th, and the team ended the playoffs in the last position with a 22.7 average finish. Number 5, Brian Vickers, 2009. Okay, now this is when things stay bad from beginning to end. Red Bull Racing was a team that started racing the NASCAR Cup Series in 2007. To say their first year was a roller coaster would be an understatement. Brian Vickers piloted their number 83 car that inaugural season and managed to not qualify for 13 races, but finish inside the top 10 in 5 races. I feel like this hardly ever happens in NASCAR nowadays. I mean, everybody already makes it in thanks to the charter, and usually the open charter cars are just way off the pace. Or if it's Shane Van Gisbergen, he wins on his first race, and he's just an absolute stud from then on out. In 2008, their results improved slightly by making all the races in the season, as well as finishing 19th in the point standings, but finished 31st or worse in 25% of those races. If only they can just be a little bit more consistent, then maybe, just maybe, they'll be able to race their way into the chase along with getting their first victory as an organization. Well, that's exactly what they did in 2009, as thanks to NASCAR adding 2 more spots into the chase for the Cup, Vickers was able to qualify into the final spot of the playoffs thanks to a win at Michigan and an incredible run throughout the summer stretch. The 83 team went from not qualifying for races to making the NASCAR postseason in less than 2 years. Perhaps the team finally found their consistency, and they were able to have a legitimate shot inside the playoffs this year. Maybe. Oh wait, I forgot what kind of video this is. Well, actually what they did was they saved all their bad finishes for the final 10 races, as the final race of the regular season would be the last top 10 that the Red Bull Racing team scored in the 2009 season. The team actually did alright in the first 2 races with an 11th and 18th place finish, but from the 3rd race onward, Vickers completely derailed. At Kansas, Vickers experienced engine issues near the end of the race, resulting in a 37th place finish. The following race at California, the 83 car was caught up in a big crash in the final 7 laps of the race, regulating the team to another bad finish. Charlotte was no better, as an unscheduled green flag pit stop halfway through the race put the 83 team multiple laps down, and with a 34th place finish. Add on a 3-lap down finish at Texas and a DNF at Phoenix, and you have yourself one of the worst performances in a chase for the Cup in NASCAR history, with an average finish of 23.7. After this season, Vickers never saw the playoffs again and suffered from heart issues after this season, along with Vickernism in 2011. But hey, at least he was able to get one more victory in his career before he went into hiding with his now wife, Sarah Vickers. Number 4, Clint Bowyer in 2015. Clint Bowyer had a rough showing in the 2015 playoffs by getting eliminated in the first round with an average finish of 19th. But that's not why he's on this list. I am actually cheating on this one, but let me tell you why. He is solely this high on the list because of his last place finish at Homestead Miami Speedway, the very last race where the Cup Series hosted a 43-car field. So let it be known that as long as NASCAR has the current format of 40 cars, no one will ever finish as worse as Clint Bowyer. That in itself is more deserving of being in the Final Four. But to say it's solely because he's had the worst finishing position in the last 9 years while being a playoff driver, that's pretty funny as hell. Number 3, Chris Buescher in 2016. Quick question for you. What is the strangest way to win a NASCAR race? Is it lightning, rain, snow, darkness, or fuel strategy? Actually, it's none of the above, because the answer is fog resting on the racetrack, which is exactly what happened for Chris Buescher in 2016. In the Pocono race, Chris Buescher and the number 34 car stayed out on the racetrack in hopes that the rain would come to the track. Well, it wasn't rain that would cut the race short. Instead, it was fog that covered the racetrack and forced a stoppage to the race due to officials and spotters not able to see the drivers throughout the 2.5-mile triangle racetrack. It was a huge shocker to see the rookie in the number 34 car head into victory lane. But what was more shocking was that the team was currently sitting in the 31st position in the point standings, meaning that they had to find a way to race their way into the top 30 in points if they wanted to be inside the playoffs. Back then, you had to be in the top 30 in points. I don't know why NASCAR took away this rule. Maybe they wanted to cause more chaos, which actually worked here in the 2024 season. Who would have thought? Shows you that one race is all that matters when it comes to NASCAR nowadays. Luckily, Buescher was able to get past his teammate in the points after the 23rd race, meaning that a team that could barely make it into the top 30 in points was going to run for a championship. Yeah, this went about as well as you can imagine. Although they finished the final 10 races without a DNF, Buescher did not finish in the top 20 in any of the round of 16 races. With an average finish of 27th in the round of 16 and an average finish of 24.4 in all 10 races, Chris Buescher was never a true contender in the playoffs that season. But hey, at least they can say they made it into the playoffs. That's way more than what Chris Buescher can say in 2024. 1/1000th of a second, are you freaking kidding me? Number 2, Aric Almirola in 2014. The first big upset that NASCAR saw a driver make it into the playoffs was when Aric Almirola with Richard Petty Motorsports shocked the world by winning a rain-shortened event at Daytona. Nearly 30 years to the date, Richard Petty won his 200th race in his Cup Series career. A very impressive feat, but one that shook up the playoffs as the team was roughly a full race behind the cut line. Because of this, a lot of people were optimistic to see whether or not the Richard Petty Motorsports machine could relive its moments back in the 60s and 70s. Well, I got some bad news for you, Chief. They couldn't. By race 1, the team had a blown engine near the end of the first race of the playoffs at Chicagoland. God, people missed this track. And dropped him 23 points below the cut line. Luckily, Aric Almirola did make up ground in the following race at New Hampshire thanks to a 6th place finish, but immediately screwed it up by having the worst performance again in the round of 16 with a 28th place finish at Dover. After getting eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, the team went on perhaps their worst stretch of the entire season. Well, maybe their second worst, because their worst was actually during the summer stretch, except for that one race at Daytona where they randomly got the victory. With a 16th place finish in the point standings with an average finish of 24.9, the team lost its momentum pretty quickly, as the team has not been in the playoffs since that fateful 2014 season. However, I feel like there's one team that actually deserves the number 1 spot over Aric Almirola in his 2014 run, and that is number 1, Erik Jones in 2019. Now this has to be one of the biggest kerfluffles in playoff history. Erik Jones and the number 20 Joe Gibbs Racing team had a lot going their direction entering the 2019 playoffs. With a 14th points finish and a win at the Southern 500, the team had a lot of optimism to be able to advance on into the round of 12, especially due to the fact that the year prior, the team actually finished 16th in the playoff standings, so they want to greatly improve from the previous season. In the first race of the playoffs at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, everything seemed to be heading in the right direction for the team as they were running around the top 10. That was until the team was suffering transmission issues after the end of stage 1. Oh no, not again. They can't go back to back in first round eliminations. They just can't do that. Well, no worries, because the next race is Richmond, and we all know that Joe Gibbs Racing does really good at Richmond, especially in the late 2010s. Booyah! Look at that! Joe Gibbs Racing finishes 1, 2, 3, 4 with Erik Jones in the 4th spot. That will fix everything. Ha ha! Oh shit. They failed post-race inspection from their rear wheel alignment. They got disqualified and credited with the last place finish. Oh my gosh. That's only 8 points. They gotta do something at the Roval, right? They're in a must-win situation. I mean, Erik Jones is not known for his road course skills, but I mean, at least he can put up a respectable finish.
Oh, we got a car getting in the bay. We got spinning cars.
Sliding into the heartburn turn. Erik Jones is around.
Huge disappointment for Erik Jones having to go to the garage. Came in this race in a must-win situation. He's got to be devastated.
The round of 16 has not been good to Erik Jones.
Holy hell! Another last place finish? You're telling me this guy finished 36th, 38th, and 40th and only managed to score 9 points towards the playoffs? That is exactly what happened. To no one's surprise, the team fell just a bit short from the cut line. And when I mean short, I mean nearly 2 full races below the cut line. It would go down as one of the worst performances in playoff series history. Now, to be fair, they did score a few top 10 finishes in the final 5 races of the playoffs, but the damage was done. I mean, it would be almost impossible to have a worse average finish than 38th place. I mean, we barely get 37 cars in the NASCAR Cup Series, so to finish worse than 38th in every single race, that's almost impossible at this point. But somehow Erik Jones did it in 2019. For now, these few performances will be known as some of the worst performances ever made by a NASCAR team in their version of the playoffs. But who knows, maybe there's going to be a new person that dethrones one of these guys as one of the worst playoff performances in history. It's going to be Harrison Burton. I mean, 34th in the point standings and they're in the 16 playoff grid. Like, what the fuck? What?
Yay!
What?
I fought.
Well, good for you. It was recorded, by the way. I'm keeping that in the video.